And welcome back, everyone, and a good day to all. If you are watching these videos in series, the previous video, we addressed a couple items that came up as a result of doing our first startup, which was we were getting some SRV DTC codes that were being set. That was addressed in the last video by fixing the wiring harness and replacing the SRV solenoid in the rear. And we also tackled putting on a new brake light switch. And in this video, our catch can, oil catch can, has arrived. And what the catch can is going to help us do is that not only is it, at least in my opinion, beneficial for non-supercharged as well as especially supercharged and turbocharged engines, is that if you remember, we went with a brand new intake. And part of the design of these is that crankcase ventilation will get pulled back through the intake to be burned as part of the ignition process. Well, a side effect of that is that the oil vapor that would come out of the crankcase as part of the ventilation process tends to build up on the insides of the intakes on these engines. And again, it's not a fault of the engine. It's not really a fault of the design. They're designed to work that way. But in an effort to keep that gunk from accumulating on the inside of the intake and possibly causing other issues, and especially since we've got a brand new build here with a brand new intake, we want to try to keep that intake as clean as possible. Now, oil catch cans are nothing new. They're used in a lot of applications, especially applications that are turbocharged and supercharged, because you tend to get possibly tend to get a bit more blow-by as far as the crankcase ventilation vapors, especially on a supercharged and turbocharged application. Now, we did this same modification to our Hellcat a few years ago, and I'll put a link in the description in the upper right. That'll come up here shortly, in which we installed not one but two billet catch cans on that application. Again, with it being a newer vehicle, just trying to keep that engine as squeaky clean as possible for as long as we can. And since this application being new, we're going to do the same thing here. Now, once again, we want to Billet Technology for their oil catch can solution for a standard Ram 1500. And the reason why I say that, I'll get to that here in a bit. So we opted to have it black anodized, to have the braided matching hose ends, as well as, braided matching hoses to go along with the black anodized, as well as the black hose ends. And these are just there to kind of, it's a cosmetic thing. It just covers up the color of the barbs that we're going to install into here, which these are already black already. But these two, which get plugged into opposite ends, one coming out of the PCV boot and the other one coming out of the intake. So this being the factory plastic tube, this catch can is going to go between that PCV port and that intake port that you see down here. And what happens is this plastic tube goes away, but you keep the rubber boots and you insert these barbs. These barbs then go into these 1/2-inch hoses with these covers, and eventually we make it to the catch can. Now, the issue is, and the reason why I state this is set up for a stock standard 1500, is that it comes with this lovely billet mounting bracket you can see here. This mounting bracket is actually meant to go, let's see if I can get you in to see this. If you remember that small triangular block that we first attached to the passenger side cylinder head when we installed the main bracket for a supercharger, mounted right here, that's where that catch can needs to go. There's not the topmost mounting hole, but there's another mounting hole kind of halfway down underneath that this bracket covers up. That is where their intended purpose for this mounting arm would go. And you can see I've loosened it up, and I'll explain why. So it's kind of meant to sit down inside the engine bay like this and get mounted to that passenger side cylinder head. Now, even if we were to somehow drill through procharger's bracket to accommodate for a bolt to go through it and get to the one hole in the cylinder head that we need, the threaded hole, this supercharger is in the way, in its bracket. So this catch can using this arm will never fit completely down here. So a thought occurred to me. So as we were looking over potential mount locations on the back of our firewall, like we got a tab here, we got a stud sticking out here, just seeing where we could potentially mount this catch can, stumbled across what you can see here. And it's just a hole that goes underneath the cowl that nothing is currently coming through that. There's not a wiring harness that clips through there. It's not a clip point for a Christmas tree clip, anything of that nature. So my thought was this: what if we loosen up, take off this mounting arm, since we know we can't use it, and then take the catch can and do something like this. Right where that mounting hole's at, if we were to bolt it in like this and see if maybe we can turn these side barbed ports down at an angle so it faces a little bit more down towards the intake, then we should be able to kind of pull this off and just use that mounting hole there to firewall. Now you see the seal there, it still puts it below the hood, so it shouldn't interfere with the hood closing, and it's, you know, a fair distance up from our intake. Now it's going to interfere with putting the engine cover on, but to be honest with you, if we have to sacrifice putting the engine cover on to make room for a catch can, I'd rather have the catch can. So that's what I'm going to look into, and that's why we've loosened up their bracket here, just so we can take it off and maybe, you know, reutilize their bolt. Now that bolt may not thread all the way in, because you notice there's some pretty good thickness of this bracket, but that's where we could potentially reuse part of their kit for another purpose. Part of this arm, when it goes up against the cylinder head, they give you this spacer that goes behind it to space this catch can out from the cylinder head. You'll notice that spacer is almost as thick as that arm. So we might be able to just utilize this spacer inside that cowl, and again, just run this bolt through it. Now we may have to drill that hole out to be a little bit bigger, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. Now you may have already seen it, it kind of gave it away a little bit, but yes, there is a replacement cowl on top of the wipers there. And the reason why that we're replacing this particular cowl, you know, it is from 2012, it's getting a little bit dated. You know, the side rubber pieces here are starting to deteriorate, but more importantly, it's mainly a cosmetic thing, to be honest with you. But the reason why is, and it's been there since we got this truck from auction, and it just kind of annoys me, you can see the existing cowl has had a big hole kind of just broken into it for one reason or another. So what we're going to work on first, and since we're going to have this cowl, this top cover cowl out of the way, and it gets us access to their bolt, then we can again see if we can just maybe drill this out and utilize this mount point for a catch can. Now with that being said, to be fair, so again, since these hoses come pre-cut from Billet for that default location, which we know we can't use. Now unfortunately, one of these hoses should be long enough to go from the catch can to the first connection point, which is that PCV valve. But the second piece of hose doesn't look like it's going to be long enough to go all the way down here to where it mounts to that intake port and then go up to the catch can, which is the second piece here. Now this one, it may still be kind of long enough for us to, yeah, it looks like they gave us some extra, so we might be able to use these hoses that came with the catch can. However, if these are not long enough, We do have an identical piece of this 1/2-inch braided hose that actually came from our installs in our Hellcat. At the time we ordered the catch cans for our Hellcat was configured slightly differently than their, at least at the time that we ordered the catch cans, hoses were being routed. And it basically meant that we didn't need this long of a hose on our particular 2019 that we have. So we actually only needed like a fraction piece, just a small like 4 or 6 inch piece. But I'll link it in the upper right hand corner. So we actually have a pretty decent section of hose left over from that previous install that we can kind of cut as needed for this install here. So again, holding on to a scrap piece for the last couple of years, it's going to prove beneficial in this case. So what I'm going to work on is getting the clips, the plastic clips, and getting the windshield wipers off this cowl, because it literally looks like once the clips are off and the windshield wipers out, that this will just kind of come forward and pull out based on the new one. And if we rotate this over, you can just see the hooks that are underneath of that, and there's also some just kind of guidance hooks here on the side. Yeah, and you can see you can see the clips that are missing from stuff being previously removed and not replaced. That, yeah, it's not much holding this piece in. Now, these windshield wiper arms may choose to be a little bit of a bear, depending on how well they're seized in. But my understanding is there's a trick to these where you can kind of just push downward a little bit on this joint once you have these free, and that should help break them free from where they're at, and they should just pull right out. If not, I actually have a tool for pulling out or pulling off windshield wipers. If we need to, we'll get it out. But I'm going to work on getting these plastic clips out, getting the windshield wipers off, and then I'll bring you back. So one moment. And welcome back. So I just want to show you, I ended up using the puller on these, and you can see this is put out by Equalizer. It's just a universal wiper puller. As you can see, there's your part number, WFA 450. And here's the puller itself. It comes with 2 sets of arms. You can see those have a little bit more of a grab, and these have a little bit shallow of a grab. So you just kind of get it situated on your wiper arm, get a good bite under the wiper arm, and you just push down on this 4-steen screw just pushes down on that center post. Now, it didn't take much to crack the driver's side loose there. Unfortunately, these are the older style. The newer style Rams, you can just pick the wiper arm up, hit a little release tab, and the entire arm will just come right off the spindle. These are a little bit more old school. And I also discovered when taking the driver one off that it doesn't have a master spline on them. So I ended up kind of laying the driver's one back into position where it was lined up with the passenger one, and marking the stud and the outer arm, as you kind of see that we've done here, so that way we know, about the correct position, so that we don't go too low or too high when we do our reinstall. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get this puller situated, get it on that stud, and hopefully get that wiper arm off as easy as the driver's side. It literally took almost no pressure at all, probably maybe a quarter of a turn at most, and the wiper arm popped right off that stud. So let me get that situated, get that arm off there, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can kind of see what we've done with our tool there, where these arms just slide in and out, just getting the center 4-steen screws centered over our stud. And then we should just be able to put a little bit of light pressure on here. Hopefully this one will pop free. There it went. Just like the driver's one. So they're on tight, but not too tight. Like I said, that was maybe a quarter of a turn off the puller. And we did mark it, as I mentioned in the previous clip. So generally, we can just kind of bend the arm up where it'll hold itself. and then just remove it. So awesome. So it's both our wiper arms. I got to get some plastic clips removed. I got to go clip the trim removal tool on it. Once we have those out, we should be able to slide that cowl piece out. So let me get these couple of push-in fasteners removed, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we've got our clips removed, our wiper arms removed. So this cowl should just pull forward at this point and get it released from its clips. There we go. There's that side. Yeah, we got a little bit of dirt underneath here, but that's to be expected. Yeah, and we got, yep, this piece here. Yeah, you can see all that was just getting brittle, starting to literally fall apart. Okay, we're loose. That's good. I just got to get it around everything. There we go. Okay, yep. So not much holds it in. Okay, so our wiper mechanism looks good. We may shoot some spare grease on these wiper joints while we're here because they look to be, yeah, they look to be pretty dry. So we'll put a little bit of Lucas grease on those while we're here. See about getting some of this dirt out. And it looks to be some kind of broken clip. Oh, it's amazing the treasures you find. Pine needles from another state. All right, awesome. So, since we have this area exposed, let me just kind of spray this down with a little bit of cleaner, get some of this out of here, and then we can look at. And there's our mounting hole, which perfect. If you can see that there, that's what we're going to try to use for our catch can, and there's nothing behind it. Yeah, there's nothing that would get in the way of it. It's not going to be in the way of any of the linkages. Here looks like another broken piece of the cowl. Yeah, okay, so that's what that was. It was the piece on the other side. It looks to be a piece that potentially the cowl locks into. So we're going to have to find a way to put that piece back on that corner. All right, but no biggie. We can take care of it. But awesome. So let me get this cleaned up and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we got it cleaned up a bit. It's not perfect, but it was a far cry better than what it was. And yes, we still have to wash down the rest of the windshield to get rid of all the cat prints who have been using the windshield as an egress and ingress point to the hood of the vehicle, but that's a different conversation. We went ahead and took their bolt out of their intended fastening tool or fastening bracket, and it wasn't as long as I thought, because it was countersunk quite a bit into their bracket. So we shouldn't need to use that spacer to go. Yeah, it looks like it's got plenty of thread in there that we could just thread it straight through the hole in that firewall there, or I should say the hole in that cowl lip there, and just tighten this up. I will put a little bit of blue Loctite on that before we go to the final tightening, just to keep that from vibrating loose. But what I'm going to use is just a step bit to step out the size of that hole a little bit more. And you can see we got it kind of like an opened up plastic bag there to help catch any shavings so they don't dribble down into areas that we don't want metal shavings in. obviously. So let me get this drilled out and then I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So just to kind of show you how that turned out before we put the bolt in. And we also went ahead and went over it with some of our touch-up paint. So we put some primer on it as well as some top coat on it just to help prevent any rust that may form there in the future, because once we drilled it, we obviously had a little bit of exposed metal. But like I said, we got a layer of primer on it and a layer of color coat on it, so we should be good there. What I'm going to do next is get our catch can ready for install. And like we stated earlier, we'll put a little bit of blue Loctite on that bolt just to help secure it so it doesn't vibrate loose. And yeah, doing the install this way means it's not going to be an easy task to remove this catch can, because it's going to be kind of semi-permanently bolted to that little cowl lip there. And you know, it's no harm, no foul. I don't plan on removing this anytime too soon. And the only piece that we really need to get to right away is to be able to unscrew the lower half of this. And there's enough clearance between where that's going to mount and the top of that intake there that we could easily get that off. So yeah, it just means that if we ever wanted to completely remove this or change this catch can out for something else, different catch can, different style, whatever, it would just mean that we would have to, you know, obviously remove the cowl cover in order to just get to that bolt. Now, one thing that may happen here once we get this tightened up, and yes, that bolt isn't perfectly, you know, flat. It does kind of go in at an angle. Now, that's some pretty thin metal, and in the absence of having like a beveled washer or some kind of wedge that would sit under the lower half of this and just kind of kick it out a little bit to straighten it up, that metal's pretty thin. So once that bolt is pretty tight, and I'm not suggesting you do this in your installs, I'm just going to grab the bottom of this catch can and just gingerly just kind of pull it out a little bit and kind of bend that metal just a hair in order to get that catch can to set straight. I looked, and unfortunately I don't have any like half washers or anything I would be able to use as a wedge to kind of kick the bottom of that out only, just to get that to go straight. But like I said, I think that metal is thin enough that we can kind of just, you know, give it an old manual adjustment, and that'll take care of it. So let me get the bolt staged and get it tightened up in the catch can, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we got our through bolt tight, and again, we did put a little bit of Loctite on that to help secure it, to keep it from vibrating loose. And once we had it tight, we just kind of grabbed the catch can in general and just gingerly just kind of pulled up on it and just allowed it to kind of bend this metal out a little bit and just kind of tweak it and to get it to go straight. Now, you see it did cause a little bit of a divot here, and that's to be expected. But again, that's just the front part of where the cowl cover kind of sits. It's not going to affect really the operation of anything. So it looks to be pretty level, pretty straight, right where it's at. Now again, the better way of doing that would be if you had the ability to maybe cut a couple washers in half so you were only attached to the you know, pulling out the bottom of this, kind of like a wedge, to be able to angle out the bottom would kind of be a better way of doing it. Or if you had like a maybe a billet piece that you could put in between here and the firewall that kind of had that, you know, angled or beveled edge to it, would be a bit better solution. But again, I think this will be fine. I think it'll be hold without an issue, and like I said, the Loctite should safeguard that bolt from wanting to vibrate loose. Another thing you could do with this bolt as well is, if you have one, you could also put a lock washer on this side of it, again, to help safeguard that bolt from backing out. But again, I think it'll be fine. So with that being said, we can start to get our hoses kind of in line. And the nice thing is, kind of where this is sitting, and it just happened to work out this way, you can see our first connection point to our PCV valve. is going to go between, let me get you down in there, we can see this better, between here and here. These catch cans are not directional, which meaning, or at least the billet ones aren't, at least this particular billet one isn't, let me put it that way. So either side can be input or output. So since this kind of lines up, we're going to do our PCV connection here. And this one, it looks like we should be able to kind of just loop around the back half of the catch can, kind of come around this way and make our connection point up to our intake here. So let me go ahead and get the hoses sized up here, and we're definitely going to use the shorter one that came with the kit, and we may have to even trim this because you can see that, yeah, we're a little bit long. We still need to get the factory elbow and a barb fitting onto this, so we'll hook up this side of it and get it plugged in the PCV port, and then we'll see what we have to trim off of this side before it goes into the catch can. So let me get that taken care of and work on this hose a little bit, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So this is kind of what we ended up with. This is the factory elbow that goes into that PCV connector. We got one of their barbs here inserted into this piece and inserted into the hose. And of course this is the end that'll go in the catch can. Now this was originally supposed to be the short hose that would have gone to the lower half of the intake, but again, we're doing a slightly different install from stock here. I did put, you can see that's without the decorative end cap, and that's with, I did put the end cap on there. It should be fine. It just kind of neatens up the end a little bit is kind of all it does. And plus the catch can, looks like they, again, you can obviously see they powder coated or anodized the adapters as well. So you kind of don't need the decorative ends in that case, but I mean, we ordered them, we'll use them. So this will be the piece that's going to go again from the PCV connection to that first half of that catch can. I should say on the left-hand side of that catch can. And this is the little nub piece that we trimmed off of it, just to take a little bit of the excess length out. And then we're going to work on our next hose here. So what I'm going to do is, depending on how difficult this is to push onto that catch can barb, I may spray this with a little bit of spray silicone just to make this a bit easier. But let me get this hose installed and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So again, to show you that piece, we ended up trimming a little bit more off of this hose here. And yes, I did go through and put the end cap on that one. Again, it's more of a dress up cosmetic thing, but I added it. So it's on both ends. We did have to shorten this up a little bit, but as you can see, I think it turned out okay. Now this will, because the catch can's mounted to the cab, the engine is going to move a little bit, or it's going to vibrate / move independently of the can. But I don't think it'll cause an issue, at least not in the long run, because you can see I can move the hose here. There is slack in here, especially with this using the factory rubber 90-degree elbow. You can see there's quite a bit of wiggle in there and enough slack that the engine, although albeit will vibrate / move a little bit independently from the cab, again, I don't think it will cause an issue long run. So this is what I'm thinking of here for the other hose, which goes to the intake. You can see we've got it barbed into where it needs to go, and I think I don't need to trim this hose at all. I think once we get it into the catch can, you can see that it just happened to be long enough. We're kind of just making a nice steady arc this way and should be able to come up and go right into the side of our can there, the other side of our can. I think the only thing I may do is once we get it in place is just kind of zip tie it to the PCV hose that we put in for the supercharger, and that way it just kind of stays off of rubbing up against the number 2 injector wiring there. So let me get this end cap on, get that in place on the other side of that catch can, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see we got our hose here. You can see it kind of goes down. We zip tied it in a couple of spots to the existing PCV hose just to kind of keep it away from a little bit of wiring here and straight in our intake. So it makes a nice kind of curvature bend. It's not, you know, overly bent. Let's see if I can get some light in here and get you a better picture. Hold on, let me just change the tripod up here a little bit. There we go. So you can see we're making a nice bend here. We're not kinking the hose. Everything's seated, so I think this will work out fine. So this was we didn't have to alter the length of this hose, which was nice. This is the longer one that came in the kit that would have normally gone to the PCV connection, because again, the catch can would have been mounted here at the front of the engine and that longer hose would have gone towards the back. So we don't have to trim anything up. Everything looks good. Everything looks good here. Again, we're not kinking the hose in any way, so we're not going to impede the airflow, and I think that will work out just fine in its current position. So awesome. I mean, if anything, yeah, we could have maybe used the longer scrap piece of hose that we had from the Hellcat install, maybe come in more towards the back of the intake and then out more, so you got rid of a little bit of this bend. But like I said, it's just a nice gradual bend. It's not causing any issues. We'll just keep an eyeball on it, but I think that'll work out fine for now. Like I said, it's not of the fault of the kit. Please don't think that. Remember, this kit was designed in the sense that it was meant to be installed on a stock 1500. Now, obviously, we've done a lot of modification work here, and we've got the supercharger bracket and its mounting hardware, you know, sitting where they originally on a stock system, you'd have those threaded spots available on the passenger side cylinder head to use their bracket. So that's, again, kind of why we had to go this way with it. So I just want to make that clear. It's not a dig on the kit. I'm not saying it's a dig on the kit. I'm not saying they didn't account for it. What I'm saying is we ordered it as if we were going to install it on the stock one, knowing that when it came in that we were going to have to slightly modify the fit a little bit to kind of make everybody happy. So with that being said, let's see about getting the cowl back in place, and then we'll go from there. And the cowl looks like it should just, as it's slid out, it should just slide back in place and lock in using the little fingers that are on the back of this. You can see here, these little loops. And we should be good. We just got to be mindful of the side pieces here and make sure that we get them underneath the trim on both sides before we do a final seating on it. So I am going to wrestle with this piece and get it all seated, and then I'll bring you back. So one moment. And welcome back. So just working on getting this cowl installed, and these side pieces, you can see here, this piece just slides up underneath this existing trim, and you see this side piece here with the groove in it just kind of goes underneath the lip of this fender panel. So if we just take this and kind of fold it under, get that started, we can get this piece here. Like I said, it's just a flexible rubber piece, so it's pretty forgiving as far as getting it into position. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, come on. So we're lined up here. There's our other point. Just getting the pin points lined up with where they go, and then we can kind of come back and work on getting this where it needs to be. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of twisting on this piece to kind of get it to fall in the groove, but it's about 90% of the way there. Like I said, there's not much that holds this on other than 1, 2, what is it, 3, 4 clips, and of course the wiper arms themselves. So back here on the driver's side, it's kind of the same thing. Just getting everything to line up so it falls into place. Now the seals underneath this are all new, obviously, because this is the new piece, so it's probably going to want to fight a little bit to go into position. Let's get that out of there. Okay. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm going to fight with this a bit more to get everything to line back up and fall back in, and then I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we're just in the process of getting this cowl fitted, and so far the only, I don't want to say pain, but the only pressure point with it is just getting these hooks in front to kind of hook up underneath the lip of the glass. And so far the best way we found to do it is just to kind of pull back on a little bit, kind of push in with your fingers on this groove here, this water channel here, at the same time push up and in, and you can kind of see that this one isn't clipped in because you got a little bit of a gap between the rubber and the windshield. So again, we're gonna just kind of pull it out a little bit, push down here, and then push in all at the same time, and usually that seems to be getting the majority of these clips in place. But we're going to continue to work on it, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we got our cowl in, we got our clips replaced. Everything looks good. Like I said, it's got new seals and everything on it, so it's not sitting completely flat all the way across, but I guess that's to be expected. Not to mention this lip, at least for here, we know we tweaked that a little bit when putting the catch can in. It may have accounted for some of this down through here, but again, it's just the cowl cover. It's gonna get rain in it anyway. That's meant to get rain, and this is never, even for the factory, never going to be a perfect seal all the way across there. Where your weather seal is right here when the hood closes to keep rain from coming down this way and then getting on the motor. Let's see. But anything that comes in through here, you saw the channel underneath, that'll get directed out accordingly. So what we can do now is see about getting our windshield wiper arms back on. Like we said, we did kind of mark these in relation to the, hopefully you can see the mark on the spindle there as far as where they go. The easiest thing to do, at least I found, is to take these and just hinge them up like you were going to change the wiper blades, like as if they were installed, and then we can just kind of line up our marks, get it started on our fingers, which that seems like that is started right there, and then we can get our bolt in and tighten it down. So I'm going to do that to both sides of this, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we got our wipers installed. They're pretty much kind of in line with the very bottom of the windshield, kind of where the speckled pattern starts, where it's been, you know, covered / tinted in that lower area, however you want to call it. So I think we've got them lined up pretty well. Of course, obviously we'll know when we go to engage the wipers, if they go up too high and hit the A-pillars on the outside, then obviously we'll have to just take them off and adjust them down a bit, but that's pretty easily done. So as you can see, we've got our new cowl installed at this point, and with all its clips back in, as well as the meat and potatoes of what we were doing today, which is our oil catch can. So to reiterate, that is not the install location that Billet intended for their particular catch can. However, again, remember we had to do that in our case because of this bad boy right here kind of eating up the location it was supposed to go in. But we found an unused hole within our firewall / cowl there, and just utilized it. And like I said, I think it turned out okay. I think it'll be fine. The hoses worked out. Again, everything looks to be routed nice and clean at this point, and obviously we'll see how well that does as far as keeping the oil out of the system and allowing the catch can to do its job and keeping our intake nice and clean. Now, like we said earlier, unfortunately, it means the engine cover is not going to go back on this particular install. But again, I'm not concerned with the engine cover not being there. It's just, engine cover is a cosmetic thing. It's just a beautification type thing. And I'd much rather, when individuals are working on this, myself and or others, just kind of see all the work that went into putting the supercharger in rather than the cover. Let's see. So I think we're good at this point. Hopefully that gave you some little bit of the inside. Like I said, the cowl isn't too bad. It's just the little Christmas tree clips in front, removing the 2 windshield wipers, and the whole thing just kind of slides forward and comes out of the way. And as far as getting everything to slide back in, it's just a matter of getting the 2 rubber trim pieces and the A-pillar lined up, along with getting those clips to kind of slide underneath the very front lip of the windshield where they kind of just hold on to. Again, not too bad of a job, just kind of had to fiddle with it a little bit. But anyway, hopefully this video helped you out, and we've got one more thing to do, which we'll show this on the longer start video, the next start video that we have coming up. We did get our replacement Banks 0 to 15 PSI sensor in, which will get installed in this location inside of our procharger boost / vacuum manifold adapter. And hopefully that will fix up that problem. This is the one that actually got lost a little bit just due to the bad weather going on in the country right now. So this is about probably about 3 or 4 days delivery later than normal, but it did get here. Now, in case something is also wrong with this one, because it did get pretty mangled up in shipment, I'm not going to lie, the package looked like it got shuffled around quite a bit. I did order another one the other day, so we'll have hopefully what we don't need as another replacement. If this one works okay, that's great. Then we'll just keep the new one that's coming as an on-the-shelf spare. So, with that being said, if you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. If you have, I thank you immensely. And the next time I bring you back, like I said, we'll get that sensor replaced in there. We'll do a power up, verify that we're getting a correct reading from that sensor, and then we'll go for a little bit longer startup. And like I said, we'll have a spill-proof funnel here and just help burp any residual air that may still be trapped in the system. And kind of let things go a little bit longer for a runtime, keep an eyeball on things, and then go from there. And yes, I did check, in case you're curious, our catch can, lower half of our catch can is nice and tight at this point. So until we learn the characteristics of the engine, we'll check that periodically. We'll open that up when we do the 500-mile service and just kind of see what's collected in that can at that point. And then once we get a general feel, just like Billet's instructions say, once we get a general feel of how quickly that's going to potentially fill up based on our driving habits with the supercharger, obviously we'll check on a routine interval. With that being said, once again, if you have subscribed already, I do thank you immensely. If you have not, please consider doing so. And with that, I will bring you back for the next one. Thank you much. Bye.